So I'd begin by asking them to think, to ask who's responsible for cybersecurity. What's their background? Who do they report to? Do they report directly to the board? How does the board oversee cyber? Is it diffuse? Is it spread out among different people, different committees? It would be best, I think best practice is really to have one committee. It could be a risk committee, it could be the audit committee. I think it doesn't really matter what you call it, but there really should be a dedicated central focus through which cyber matters are overseen, through which there's direct reporting to and from the board. So I'd start with that. I'd ask also, is there anybody on the board who is a cyber expert, has an expertise and background in cyber matters that the board would be able to call on? Increasingly, I think there are people who are saying that in this very complicated and challenging time, that at least for major companies, they should be looking to add someone to the board with with cyber expertise. I don't know that that's necessary, but certainly that is a question that I would counsel a prospective director to think about. After that, I think there are a series of different things that you should inquire. What kind of basis does the company use for for assessing cybersecurity? Does it have a sort of a checklist compliance approach, or does it have more a risk-based assessment approach utilizing something like the NIST framework? And is the company, for example, ISO certified? That's the International Standards Organizations. I think I would ask, I would ensure that they have a separate security officer, cybersecurity officer, and not someone who kind of moonlights in that role. I think up until a number of years ago, I think many companies had the chief information officer or chief technology officer sort of also moonlight as the security officer. And there's an inherent tension, frankly, between those two positions, because in many cases the technology officer or information officer is incentivized to make greater use of technology for the business, to provide greater access to information, and not that they wouldn't be concerned about security, but they may have a different balance. And so I think it is important to have a security officer who is going to be able to look at the intended uses and applications of technology and data, and to say, well, we really should think about the security implications a little more. So I think that's sort of another consideration I'd look at. We should look at whether there's a response plan. How and who is on the response team? What members of management? Is the response team include all the different stakeholders, communications, legal, technology? Who are the outside advisors and experts that are available and on retainer to help in the event of an incident? Have there been prior incidents? How were they dealt with? And how did that go? I'd also look to see what their training programs are like of employees, of management, and frankly, do they run tabletop exercises where they try to simulate what may happen, in a post-breach situation? Those are opportunities for determining how management, the board, and the various advisors all work together. And in particular, if they've had prior incidents, it would be, I think, extremely useful to get a sense as to how they were handled and how the response plan was unveiled. Because at the end of the day, and I think I'll paraphrase, and I forget whether it's General Marshall or General Eisenhower, they said, it was great to have a plan to invade Europe, but it was immediately obsolete when when the invasion began, but what was important was the planning. So the response plan is not it's not a break the glass and do steps 1, 2, and 3. It's really about preparing you to think about the kind of issues that might come up and how you would respond to them. And because it's impossible to anticipate the kind of the multitude of things that may arise and how they may interact together and play upon each other.